The rain fell in heavy sheets across the city park, turning the autumn evening into a gray blur of misery. Most people had rushed indoors hours ago, but one figure remained on the old wooden bench, hunched over something precious in his arms. Christopher Bennett, worth over $2 billion according to Forbes, sat soaked to the bone, his expensive suit clinging to his trembling frame like a second skin. In his arms, baby Lucas screamed with the desperate cry of a 4-month-old who hadn't been properly fed or changed in hours. The sound cut through the rain like a knife, but Christopher seemed too exhausted to care. His eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, stared straight ahead at nothing. 3 days ago, his ex-wife Rachel had dropped Lucas on his doorstep with nothing but a diaper bag and a note saying she couldn't handle motherhood anymore. Christopher had tried everything. Hired the best nannies money could buy, but Lucas rejected them all. The baby would scream until they left, then fall silent only to start again when a new face appeared. Nothing worked. No amount of money could fix this. So here he sat, in the rain, wondering how someone who could run a tech empire worth billions couldn't figure out how to comfort one tiny baby. "Mummy, why is he sleeping here?" The small voice cut through his despair like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Christopher looked up to see a little girl with dark braids, maybe 6 years old, pointing at him from under a bright yellow umbrella. Beside her stood a young woman, beautiful despite her worn scrubs and tired eyes. "Sophie, don't point," the woman said gently, but her voice carried genuine concern as she studied Christopher and the crying baby. "Sir, are you all right? That baby sounds hungry." Christopher tried to speak but only managed a hoarse whisper. "I don't know what to do anymore." The woman stepped closer, her daughter staying right beside her. "I'm Amara Thompson and this is Sophie. We live in the apartments across the street." She knelt down slightly, studying the baby with professional eyes. "When did he last eat?" "This morning, I think. Maybe yesterday morning. I can't remember." Christopher's voice broke. "I have everything money can buy but nothing works. He won't stop crying." Amara's heart clenched. She recognized that look, the desperate exhaustion of a parent at the end of their rope. She'd been there herself when Sophie was born and she was all alone. "What's your name?" "Christopher." "This is Lucas." "Christopher, you and Lucas can't stay out here in the rain. You'll both get sick." Amara made a decision that would change all their lives. "Come home with us. I'll help you figure this out." Christopher looked up at her, rain streaming down his face. "You don't understand. I'm not homeless. I have a penthouse uptown. He gestured helplessly at the crying baby. "I can't make him stop." "Money can't solve everything," Amara said softly. "But kindness can solve a lot. Come on." Something in her voice, warm and certain, broke through Christopher's fog of despair. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." Sophie spoke up, her 6-year-old wisdom simple and pure. "Mummy says people with babies aren't scary. They're just scared." Amara smiled at her daughter, then held out her hand to Christopher. "She's right. I'm a nurse. I can help with the baby, and you look like you need some hot soup and dry clothes." Christopher stared at her outstretched hand. 3 days ago he would have called his driver, retreated to his empty penthouse, and hired another nanny. But 3 days of failure had stripped away his pride. "I don't have anything to offer you in return." "I didn't ask for anything in return." Amara kept her hand extended. "Sometimes we all need help. Today it's your turn to receive it." With shaking hands, Christopher gathered Lucas closer and accepted Amara's help to stand. The baby's cries seemed to quiet slightly, as if sensing the change in his father's energy. As they walked toward the apartment building, Sophie chattering cheerfully about her day at school, Christopher felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Oh. This woman, this stranger, had looked at his wealth and status and seen right through to what he really was. A scared father who needed help. Amara's apartment building was nothing like his penthouse tower. The stairs creaked, paint peeled from the walls, and he could hear neighbors' televisions through thin walls. But when Amara opened her door and warm light spilled into the hallway, it felt more like home than anywhere Christopher had been in years. "Sophie, can you get some towels while I help with the baby?" Amara asked, already reaching for Lucas. Christopher hesitated. "He doesn't like strangers. He screams whenever anyone else holds him." "Let me try," Amara said gently. "Sometimes babies just need a different kind of touch." The moment Lucas settled into Amara's arms, his cries began to fade. She swayed slightly, humming a soft melody, and within minutes the apartment fell blessedly quiet. Christopher stared in amazement. "How did you do that?" "Experience," Amara said simply. And maybe he was just tired of being scared. Babies feel everything we feel. As Christopher stood dripping in the small but tidy living room, watching this woman who barely knew him comfort his son, he realized his life had just taken a turn he never could have planned for. All his money, all his success, meant nothing compared to this simple act of human kindness. "Thank you," he whispered, and for the first time in days meant it completely. Amara's small apartment buzzed with quiet activity as she settled her unexpected guests. Christopher sat at her tiny kitchen table, wearing one of her oversized university sweatshirts while his expensive clothes tumbled in her ancient washing machine. The sight of a billionaire in her old college sweatshirt should have been ridiculous, but something about it felt right. "Here's some tea," Amara said, setting down a mismatched mug. "Sophie's getting her pajamas on, and I've got a clean diaper on Lucas. He's sleeping in the portable crib I kept from when Sophie was little." Christopher wrapped his hands around the warm mug, still amazed at the silence. "I can't believe he's actually quiet. The nannies I hired, they all had degrees from fancy schools, years of experience. None of them could do what you just did." "Sometimes degrees don't teach you the most important things," Amara said, settling across from him with her own tea. "Babies need to feel safe before anything else. He was picking up on your stress." "My stress?" Christopher looked confused. "But I was trying everything to help him." "Were you? Or were you trying to fix a problem?" Amara asked gently. "There's a difference. When Sophie was born, I spent weeks trying to make her stop crying instead of trying to understand what she needed." Christopher considered this. "His mother left him with me 3 days ago. Just dropped him off with a note saying she couldn't handle being a mother. I've been trying to prove I could handle it alone, but you're human," Amara finished. "And being a parent is the hardest job in the world, especially when you're doing it alone." Sophie appeared in the doorway wearing pink pajamas with unicorns. "Mummy, can I see the baby?" Very quietly, Amara whispered. "He's sleeping." Sophie tiptoed to the portable crib and peered down at Lucas. "He's so tiny. Is his daddy going to live with us now?" Christopher's cheeks reddened. "Sophie, I'll be gone tomorrow. I just needed help for tonight." "But where will you go?" Sophie asked with 6-year-old logic. "If you don't know how to take care of the baby, won't he just cry again?" Amara caught Christopher's eye across the small space. "She has a point. Learning to care for a baby takes time." "I can't impose on you any more than I already have," Christopher said. "You've done so much already." "Have you eaten today?" Amara asked, already knowing the answer from his pale complexion. No. I don't think so." Without a word, Amara moved to her small kitchen and began pulling ingredients from cabinets. "Sophie, can you set the table for 3? "I really can't ask you to cook for me," Christopher protested. "You're not asking. I'm offering." Amara began browning ground beef in a skillet. "And before you try to give me money for groceries, save your breath. You can't buy your way out of accepting kindness." Christopher watched her work, efficient and calm despite having 2 unexpected house guests and a baby sleeping nearby. "Why are you doing this? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Amara said, adding onions to the pan. "I know you love that baby enough to sit in the rain rather than abandon him. I know you're scared and exhausted and trying your best. That's enough for me. But what if I'm some kind of criminal? What if helping me puts you and Sophie in danger?" Sophie looked up from setting out plastic plates. "Are you a criminal?" "No," Christopher said honestly. "Then you're not," Sophie said with simple 6-year-old finality. "Mummy says most people are good, they're just having bad days sometimes." As the smell of cooking filled the small apartment, Christopher felt his shoulders begin to relax for the first time in days. "I run a technology company," he found himself saying. "I started it in college and it grew bigger than I ever expected. But success in business doesn't prepare you for—" He gestured toward the sleeping baby. "For love," Amara said softly. "Business is about controlling outcomes. Love is about accepting that you can't control everything, and that's okay." They ate dinner together at the small table, Sophie chattering about school while Lucas slept peacefully nearby. Christopher found himself actually tasting food for the first time in days, laughing at Sophie's stories about her friends. "Mummy works at the hospital," Sophie informed Christopher importantly. "She helps people feel better." "What do you do at the hospital?" Christopher asked Amara. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she said. "Night shift, usually. My neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez watches Sophie while I work." Christopher did quick math in his head. Night shift nursing, single mother, this apartment. Amara was barely making ends meet, yet she'd invited strangers home and cooked them dinner without hesitation. When have you ever witnessed such pure kindness from a stranger? When someone extends a helping hand without asking for anything in return, doesn't it make you believe there's still good in the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one. After dinner, as Sophie played quietly with her dolls and Lucas continued sleeping, Amara and Christopher found themselves talking on her small couch. She told him about nursing school, about Sophie's father who left when he found out about the pregnancy, about the struggles of raising a child alone. Christopher shared more than he'd intended to. About building his company from nothing, about the loneliness that came with success, about Rachel and her decision to leave Lucas behind. She said she never wanted to be a mother, Christopher said quietly. That she only got pregnant to try to trap me into marriage, but when that didn't work and Lucas was actually born, she realized she couldn't handle the reality. That must have been devastating, Amara said. The worst part is I think Lucas knows. Babies are smarter than we think. He knows she didn't want him, and I think he's been waiting for me to abandon him too. Is that what you want? To abandon him? Christopher looked toward the crib where Lucas slept peacefully. No. He's my son. I love him more than I thought possible to love anyone. But I don't know how to show him that in a way he understands. You do it the same way you show anyone you love them, Amara said simply. You show up. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. As the evening wore on and it became clear that Christopher had nowhere else to go that night, Amara made up the couch for him. Lucas can stay in the crib in Sophie's room. If he wakes up, wake me. Don't try to handle it alone. I can't let you lose sleep over my problems, Christopher protested. Christopher, Amara said gently, accepting help doesn't make you weak. Makes you human. And that little boy needs his father to be human, not perfect. As Christopher settled onto the couch that was too short for his tall frame, listening to the sounds of a real home for the first time in years, he realized something had shifted inside him. Tomorrow he would have to figure out what came next, but tonight, for the first time since Lucas had been born, both father and son were sleeping peacefully. Christopher woke to the sound of soft humming and the smell of coffee. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was. Then he saw Amara in the kitchen, gently bouncing Lucas while she moved around preparing breakfast. The baby was awake and content, making soft cooing sounds instead of the desperate cries Christopher had grown accustomed to. Good morning, Amara said softly, noticing he was awake. He woke up about an hour ago, but he's been perfectly happy. I think he just needed a good night's sleep. Christopher sat up on the couch, his back protesting the short cushions. You should have woken me. What? You both needed rest. Amara bounced Lucas gently. Besides, I'm used to being up early. Coffee? Please. Christopher accepted the mug gratefully, studying his son. Lucas looked different somehow, more relaxed. He looks peaceful, Amara finished. Babies respond to calm energy. When you're panicked, they're panicked. When you're relaxed, they can relax too. Sophie emerged from her bedroom, hair sticking up in all directions. Morning, Daddy Christopher. Christopher nearly choked on his coffee. Sophie, I'm not. You're taking care of the baby, so you're a daddy? Sophie said matter-of-factly. Can I help feed Lucas? Amara smiled. After you brush your teeth and get dressed for school. As Sophie bounced off to get ready, Amara sat beside Christopher on the couch, still holding Lucas. She has a point, you know. Being a father isn't just about biology. It's about showing up. I want to show up, Christopher said quietly. But I don't know how. Everything I've ever been successful at has been about planning, strategy, execution. He gestured helplessly. This is completely different. Parenting isn't a business plan, Amara agreed. It's more like jazz music. You learn the basics, then you improvise. Christopher watched as she effortlessly shifted Lucas to a more comfortable position. How do you make it look so easy? Practice. And patience with myself when I mess up. Amara met his eyes. Can I ask you something? What's your plan for today? Christopher realized he didn't have one. I suppose I should go home. Try to find another nanny. And if Lucas rejects the new nanny like he did all the others? Christopher had no answer. What if we tried something different? Amara suggested gently. What if you stayed here today? Learned some basics, took it slow? I can't keep imposing on you. You're not imposing. You're accepting help. Amara handed Lucas to Christopher, and amazingly, the baby settled contentedly against his father's chest. Look at that. He trusts you. Christopher stared down at his son, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his own. He does, doesn't he? He always did. You just needed to trust yourself. After Sophie left for school with promises to come straight home to see the baby, Amara began teaching Christopher the basics of infant care. She showed him how to hold Lucas properly, how to read his different cries, how to burp him effectively. The key is confidence, she explained as Christopher successfully changed his first diaper without incident. Babies can sense hesitation. If you're unsure, they get unsure. But what if I hurt him? He's so small. You won't hurt him by being gentle and careful. You'll hurt him more by staying distant because you're afraid. They spent the morning taking care of Lucas together, and Christopher began to see patterns he'd missed before. The way Lucas's cries changed depending on what he needed. How he calmed when Christopher spoke in low, soothing tones. The way he seemed to search for his father's face when he was upset. I think I need to go grocery shopping, Amara mentioned around lunchtime, looking in her nearly empty refrigerator. I wasn't expecting house guests. Let me pay for groceries, Christopher said immediately. It's the least I can do. Amara hesitated. Christopher. Please. You've done so much for us already. Let me contribute something. All right, Amara agreed, accepting his offer with grace. But we shop together. I want to make sure we get things Lucas can use too. The grocery store trip was a revelation for Christopher. He'd never shopped for everyday necessities before. His assistant handled all personal purchases, delivering everything to his penthouse. But walking through the aisles with Amara, learning about different types of baby formula and which cereal Sophie preferred, felt surprisingly normal and good. We need diapers, Amara said, stopping in the baby section. And maybe some different bottles. Sometimes babies are picky about nipple shapes. Christopher found himself genuinely interested in the differences between bottle types, asking questions he never would have thought to ask before. When they reached the checkout, he handed over his credit card without thinking. The cashier's eyes widened at the name on the card. Christopher Bennett? Like the tech guy? Yes, Christopher said simply. Wow. My husband works for one of your subsidiary companies. As they loaded groceries into Amara's modest car, she was quiet. Christopher wondered if learning about his wealth changed things between them. Are you okay? He asked finally. I'm processing, Amara admitted. I knew you had money from your clothes and the way you talked. But I didn't realize you were Christopher Bennett. Does it change anything? Amara considered this as she started the car. It explains some things. Like why you seem so lost about basic baby care. When you can hire people to handle everything, you never learn to handle things yourself. Is that judgment in your voice? No, Amara said firmly. It's understanding. You've lived in a world where money solves problems. But some problems can't be solved with money. They have to be solved with time and patience and love. Back at the apartment, they put away groceries while Lucas napped. Christopher felt more useful than he had in days, learning where Amara kept things, helping organize the new baby supplies. This feels. He started to say, then stopped. Feels like what? Like home, he admitted. My penthouse has everything money can buy, but it doesn't feel like this. Amara smiled. That's because this place has something your penthouse doesn't have. What's that? Love, she said simply. Not the kind you can buy. The kind you build day by day with small acts of kindness. As afternoon turned to evening and Sophie came home from school full of excitement about seeing the baby again, Christopher realized he didn't want to leave. For the first time in his adult life, he was exactly where he belonged. 3 days had passed since Christopher first sat on that park bench, and life had settled into an unexpected rhythm in Amara's small apartment. Each morning, he woke on the couch to find Amara already up, usually holding a content Lucas while she prepared breakfast. Each day he learned something new about caring for his son. He likes when you sing to him, Amara observed, watching Christopher change Lucas on the makeshift changing station they'd set up on the coffee table. Your voice is naturally soothing. I don't sing, Christopher protested, but he found himself humming softly as he worked, and Lucas responded with happy gurgles. You do now, Amara said with a smile. Sophie had appointed herself Lucas's big sister, helping with everything from bottle feeding to picking out tiny outfits. He likes the blue one better than the green one, she announced seriously, holding up 2 onesies. See how his eyes get happy when he sees blue? Christopher studied his son's face and realized Sophie was right. Lucas did seem more alert and content in certain colors. How had he never noticed these small details before? You're very observant, Sophie, he told her, and she beamed with pride. That evening, after Sophie was in bed and Lucas was sleeping peacefully, Christopher and Amara sat on the couch talking quietly. These conversations had become precious to Christopher, a time when he could share thoughts he'd never voiced to anyone. Can I ask you something personal? Christopher said. You can ask. I might not answer, Amara replied with a gentle smile. Sophie's father. Do you ever regret having her? Amara's voice was firm. Never. Not for 1 second. But it must have been hard being alone. Amara was quiet for a moment. The hardest thing wasn't being alone. It was learning to trust myself. Everyone had opinions about what I should do. Keep the baby, give her up, get back with him. But I had to learn to trust that I knew what was best for my child. How did you learn that? By making mistakes and realizing they weren't fatal. By accepting help when I needed it. By understanding that loving someone doesn't mean being perfect, it means being present. Christopher considered this. I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect. In business, perfection is the goal. 0 defects, maximum efficiency. And with Lucas? With Lucas, I'm learning that perfection is impossible. But maybe that's okay. As the days continued, Christopher began to understand what Amara meant about being present. When Lucas cried, instead of panicking and trying to fix it immediately, Christopher learned to hold him close and wait, letting his son feel safe before addressing the problem. It worked every time. He also began to see how Amara lived. She worked long shifts at the hospital, coming home exhausted but always finding energy for Sophie. Her refrigerator was covered with Sophie's artwork, her evenings spent helping with homework or reading bedtime stories. Every decision she made was filtered through one question. What's best for Sophie? I want to do something, Christopher announced on Thursday morning. What's that? Amara asked, preparing to leave for a day shift at the hospital. The bathroom faucet drips. The bedroom door doesn't close properly. The kitchen light flickers. Let me fix these things while you're at work. Christopher, you don't have to. I want to, he said firmly. You're letting me stay here, learn how to be a father. Let me contribute something useful. Amara studied his face and saw genuine desire to help, not obligation. Okay. But if you can't figure something out, wait for me to get home. Don't hire professionals to come in here. Why not? Because then you're not fixing things. You're buying solutions. There's a difference. After Amara left for work and Sophie for school, Christopher found himself alone with Lucas for the first time since that night on the bench. The old panic started to rise, but he pushed it down. Lucas was fed, changed, and content in his bouncy seat, watching his father with bright, curious eyes. Okay, buddy, Christopher said, talking to Lucas as he gathered tools from Amara's small toolbox. Let's see what we can fix around here. The dripping faucet turned out to be a simple washer replacement. Christopher had never done basic plumbing before, but he watched online tutorials while Lucas babbled happily nearby. When he finally stopped the drip, he felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with closing business deals or stock prices. The bedroom door required adjusting the hinges. Christopher worked carefully, Lucas in his carrier right beside him, talking to his son about what he was doing. See the screw here? It's loose so the door doesn't hang straight. We tighten it up and everything works better. Lucas seemed fascinated by his father's voice and the tools. When Christopher successfully hung the door properly, Lucas clapped his tiny hands together, making Christopher laugh out loud. You like watching Daddy work, don't you? The flickering kitchen light was more challenging. Christopher discovered the problem wasn't the bulb but a loose wire connection. As he carefully secured the wiring, he talked to Lucas about electrical safety, about taking time to do things right instead of rushing. In business, I always rushed, he told his son. Faster was always better. But with you, I'm learning that slower can be better. Taking time to understand the problem before trying to fix it. When Amara came home that evening, she stopped in the doorway, amazed. The apartment felt different. Not just because the minor repairs were done, but because it felt more like a home where a family lived together. Everything works, she said, testing the light switch. Lucas helped, Christopher said proudly. He's a very good supervisor. Sophie ran in from school and immediately noticed the changes. Daddy, Christopher fixed everything. Look, the door closes right now. That evening at dinner, Sophie made an announcement. Tommy at school asked if Daddy Christopher was my new daddy. Christopher tensed, waiting for Amara to correct her daughter. Instead, Amara asked gently, What did you tell Tommy? I told him that families come in different ways. Some kids have one mommy and one daddy. Some kids have just a mommy or just a daddy. Some kids have two mommies or two daddies. And some kids get extra people who love them when they need it most. Christopher felt his chest tighten with emotion. Sophie, that's very wise. Mummy says love makes families, not just being born together. Later, after Sophie was asleep and Lucas was down for the night, Christopher and Amara sat on the couch, both lost in thought. "She's right, you know," Amara said softly. "About families. Are you saying?" Christopher began. "I'm saying that you and Lucas have become part of our family. Not because of paperwork or legal documents, but because we care about each other. We show up for each other." Christopher reached for her hand. "I've never had a family like this before. My parents were more like business partners than parents. Rachel and I were never really partners at all." "What do you want, Christopher? For yourself and for Lucas?" Christopher looked around the small apartment, at the evidence of their life together. Sophie's homework on the table, Lucas's bottles in the dish drainer, his own clothes folded neatly on the chair. "I want this," he said simply. "I want home." Christopher woke on Monday morning to his phone buzzing insistently. He'd been ignoring calls from his office for over a week, but the urgency in the ringtone told him his absence was no longer something he could put off. "Christopher Bennett?" he answered quietly, not wanting to wake Lucas. "Christopher, thank God," came the frantic voice of his assistant, Rebecca. "Where have you been? The Samsung deal is falling apart, the investors are threatening to pull out of the Singapore expansion, and the board is meeting tomorrow morning with or without you." Christopher felt the familiar weight of corporate responsibility settling back onto his shoulders. "I'll be in this afternoon." "This afternoon? Christopher, you've been missing for a week. People are starting to talk about whether you're fit to run the company." Christopher looked around Amara's small apartment, at Lucas sleeping peacefully in his crib, at Sophie's drawing stuck to the refrigerator. "I haven't been missing, Rebecca. I've been learning how to be a father." That's wonderful, but you have responsibilities." "You're right," Christopher said quietly. "I'll be in at 2. After hanging up, he found Amara in the kitchen, preparing breakfast before her shift. She'd heard enough of the conversation to understand. "You have to go back," she said. "It wasn't a question. I have to go in, yes. But Amara, this week with you and Sophie and Lucas, it's been the most important week of my life." "I know," she said softly. "But you can't run away from your responsibilities forever." "I'm not running away. I'm trying to figure out how to balance everything." Christopher sat down heavily at the small table. "I don't want to go back to the way things were before." Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school. "Are you leaving us, Daddy Christopher?" The question hit Christopher like a physical blow. "Sophie, I have to go to work today, but you're coming back, right? You and Lucas." Christopher looked at Amara, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. "I don't know what happens next, sweetheart. I wish I did." After Sophie left for school, Christopher prepared to leave for his office. Lucas fussed when Christopher tried to put him in his car seat, sensing the tension in his father's body. "He knows something's wrong," Amara observed. "I don't want to take him to the office. It's not a place for babies." "Then don't," Amara said simply. "Let me watch him today." "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Amara took Lucas from Christopher's arms, and the baby immediately settled. "Go handle your business. Lucas and I will be here when you get back. Promise?" "Promise." Christopher's office building felt like a foreign country after a week in Amara's apartment. Everything was glass and steel and efficiency, the exact opposite of the warm, lived-in feeling of home. His assistant Rebecca met him at the elevator, tablet in hand, firing off updates and urgent matters that needed immediate attention. "The Samsung executives are in conference room A," she said as they walked briskly toward his office. "Legal needs your signature on the merger documents, and the board wants a full explanation for your absence." "Schedule a board meeting for tomorrow morning," Christopher said, settling behind his massive desk. "And Rebecca, I need you to do something for me." "Of course. I need you to find someone. A pediatric nurse named Amara Thompson. She works night shift at Metropolitan Hospital. I want to offer her a position." Rebecca looked confused. "What kind of position?" "Personal child care specialist. For my son. Full-time, excellent benefits, salary commensurate with her skills and experience." "Sir, I can contact the nanny agencies we used before?" "No agencies," Christopher said firmly. "This specific person. Find out what she makes at the hospital and offer her 3 times that amount." The meetings that followed were intense but familiar. Christopher slipped back into corporate mode, making decisions, solving problems, managing crises. But part of his mind remained with Lucas and Amara, wondering what they were doing, whether Lucas was happy. By evening, he was exhausted in a completely different way than he'd been with Lucas. Corporate exhaustion felt empty, while caring for his son felt fulfilling even when it was tiring. He arrived back at Amara's apartment to find her feeding Lucas dinner, Sophie doing homework at the kitchen table. "How did it go?" Amara asked. "Like riding a bicycle. All the old skills came back immediately." Christopher sat down heavily. "But I kept thinking about home." "This isn't your home," Amara said gently. "This is temporary, remember? What if I don't want it to be temporary?" Before Amara could answer, Christopher's phone rang. "Rebecca again." "I found Amara Thompson," his assistant said. "Pediatric nurse, night shift at Metropolitan Hospital. Single mother, excellent work record." "Good. Set up a meeting." "Already done. She can meet you tomorrow at lunch to discuss the position." After Christopher hung up, Amara looked at him suspiciously. "What was that about?" "I want to offer you a job," Christopher said. "As Lucas's nanny. Full-time, excellent salary, benefits for you and Sophie." Amara set down Lucas's bottle. "Christopher. Before you say no, hear me out. You're the only person Lucas responds to besides me. You understand babies in a way I'm still learning. And frankly, I need help. What about my job at the hospital? You'd make more money working for me. You could spend more time with Sophie. You wouldn't have to work night shifts anymore." Amara was quiet for a long moment. "And where would this job take place?" "Your penthouse." "Yes. You and Sophie would move in with Lucas and me. You'd have your own suite, complete privacy, but you'd be there to help with Lucas." Sophie looked up from her homework, eyes bright with excitement. "We'd live in a penthouse? Like in the movies?" "Sophie," Amara warned gently. "Let me think about this." "What's to think about?" Christopher asked, genuinely confused. "It solves everyone's problems." "Does it?" Amara asked quietly. "Or does it just make you more comfortable with the help you're getting?" Christopher felt stung by the implication. "That's not what this is about." "Isn't it? You're offering to pay me for what I've been doing freely. You're turning kindness into a business transaction. I'm trying to take care of you the way you've taken care of us. By making me your employee?" The question hung in the air between them. Christopher realized he might have misunderstood something fundamental about their relationship, but he wasn't sure what. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to accept help without paying for it. I don't know how to be part of a family without it being a business arrangement." Amara's expression softened. "Christopher, accepting the job won't change what's happened between us this week. But it might complicate it." "How?" "Because employers and employees have different relationships than friends do. Than family does." Christopher looked at Lucas, now sleeping peacefully in Amara's arms. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to let me think about it," Amara said. "This is a big decision for Sophie and me." "Of course. Take all the time you need." But as they settled into their evening routine, Christopher couldn't shake the feeling that he'd somehow taken a wrong step, moving away from the family feeling they'd built instead of closer to it. Amara didn't give Christopher her answer immediately. Instead, she asked for a week to consider the offer, during which Christopher continued staying at her apartment while commuting to his office each day. The arrangement felt increasingly natural to everyone except Christopher, who worried constantly about imposing. "You're not imposing," Amara told him repeatedly. "But you are overthinking." "I just want to do the right thing," Christopher replied, bouncing Lucas gently while Amara prepared dinner. "The right thing isn't always the complicated thing," Sophie chimed in from the living room where she was building a blanket fort. "Sometimes the right thing is just the happy thing." Christopher was beginning to understand that Sophie, despite being only 6, often saw situations more clearly than the adults around her. When he asked her what she thought about moving to his penthouse, her response was characteristically direct. "Will we still be a family there?" "What do you mean?" "Will we still eat dinner together and watch movies and help each other with stuff?" "I hope so." "Then it doesn't matter where we live," Sophie said pragmatically. "Family is about the people, not the place." By Thursday, Amara had made her decision. "I'll take the job," she told Christopher over breakfast. "But with conditions. Whatever you need. First, Sophie and I keep our apartment. We'll stay at your place during the week when you need help with Lucas, but we come home on weekends." Christopher started to protest, but Amara held up a hand. "Second, my salary stays reasonable. I looked up what full-time nannies make in the city. That's what you'll pay me." "Amara, I can afford to pay you much more." "I know you can. But this isn't about what you can afford. It's about maintaining balance in our relationship." "I don't understand." "If you pay me way more than I'm worth, then I become dependent on you. If I become dependent on you, then I can't make free choices about our relationship. Does that make sense? Christopher considered this. You're protecting your independence. I'm protecting all of us, including you. The move to Christopher's penthouse the following week was an adventure for Sophie and a learning experience for everyone. The luxury apartment took up the entire top floor of one of the city's most exclusive buildings, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city skyline. It's like living in the clouds, Sophie breathed, pressing her face against the glass. Don't get too close to the windows, Amara warned, but she was smiling at her daughter's wonder. Christopher had prepared a suite for them that was larger than their entire apartment. Sophie had her own bedroom with an en-suite bathroom, while Amara's room was spacious and elegant, with a small sitting area and its own entrance to maintain privacy. This is too much, Amara said, looking around the beautifully appointed rooms. It's what I have, Christopher replied. I want you to be comfortable. Lucas seemed to thrive in the new environment. With more space to spread out and Amara's constant presence to provide security, he became increasingly social and happy. Christopher found himself looking forward to coming home from work each evening, knowing he'd find his son content and his family waiting for him. The word family still felt strange to Christopher, but that's what they'd become. Sophie did her homework at the large dining room table while Christopher worked on his laptop nearby. Amara prepared meals in the gourmet kitchen, teaching Christopher basic cooking skills when he expressed interest. I've never actually cooked anything from scratch, Christopher admitted, watching Amara prepare homemade pasta sauce. Never? I had a housekeeper who cooked or I ate out. Even as a kid, my parents employed a cook. Well, Lucas is going to eat real food when he's older, so you should learn. Amara handed him a wooden spoon. Stir this while I cut vegetables. Cooking together became one of Christopher's favorite parts of the day. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something nourishing with his own hands, about the way Sophie helped by setting the table, about Lucas watching them from his high chair with bright, curious eyes. This is what normal families do, isn't it? Christopher asked one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. Define normal, Amara replied, drying dishes while Christopher washed. I mean, they cook together, eat together, talk about their days. Some do. Every family creates their own normal. What's our normal? Amara smiled. Our normal is helping each other. Showing up. Being present. Christopher was learning that being present required skills he'd never developed in business. When Sophie needed help with math homework, he couldn't delegate it to an assistant. When Lucas was teething and crying, he couldn't hire someone to fix the problem immediately. He had to sit with the discomfort, offer comfort, and wait for things to resolve naturally. Patience, Amara told him when he got frustrated with Lucas's fussiness. Babies don't operate on business timelines. How do you stay so calm all the time? I don't. I just don't panic anymore when things don't go according to plan. Teach me. You're already learning. Look how you handled Lucas's bedtime routine tonight. Christopher thought back to that evening's bedtime. Lucas had been overtired and difficult, rejecting his bottle and crying when put in his crib. Instead of calling for Amara immediately, Christopher had picked up his son, dimmed the lights, and simply walked around the apartment, humming softly until Lucas finally relaxed and fell asleep in his arms. I did handle it, didn't I? You've been handling it for weeks now. You just haven't been trusting yourself. The revelation that he could trust himself was profound for Christopher. In business, he trusted his instincts completely. But with personal relationships, he'd always doubted his abilities. Living with Amara and Sophie was teaching him that the same instincts that made him successful in business could be applied to family life, just with different goals. Instead of maximizing profit, he was maximizing happiness. Instead of beating competitors, he was building relationships. Instead of closing deals, he was opening his heart. I think I'm finally learning how to live, he told Amara one evening after Sophie and Lucas were both asleep. What do you mean? Before this, I was just working. Even my personal life was like work. Everything was a transaction, a goal to achieve, a problem to solve. Christopher paused, looking around the living room where Sophie's coloring books were scattered on the coffee table and Lucas's toys were neatly arranged in a basket. But this feels like living. What's the difference? Living has room for mess. For things that don't have a purpose except joy. For relationships that don't have an end goal except love. Amara smiled. You're getting it. Am I? You're here. You're present. You're choosing us over everything else that demands your attention. That's love in action. As Christopher settled into his new life, he realized that success wasn't what he'd always thought it was. Success wasn't just about building wealth or growing companies. Real success was about building relationships, growing as a person, and creating something meaningful that would last beyond any business achievement. For the first time in his adult life, Christopher felt successful in the ways that truly mattered. By the third week of their new living arrangement, a rhythm had developed that felt surprisingly natural to everyone involved. Christopher's days started early with Lucas, giving Amara time to get Sophie ready for school and pack lunches. Evenings were spent together in the large living room, homework spread across the coffee table while Lucas played on his blanket nearby. "I have a parent-teacher conference next week," Amara mentioned over dinner one Friday evening. "How's Sophie doing in school?" Christopher asked, genuinely interested. "Really well. Her teacher says she's one of the most helpful students in class, always looking out for kids who need extra support." Sophie beamed at the praise. "Tommy was sad because he forgot his lunch money, so I shared my sandwich with him." "That was very kind of you," Christopher said, and Sophie glowed with happiness. Christopher had begun to understand that Sophie craved approval from father figures, something that made his heart ache for the little girl who'd grown up without one. He made a conscious effort to acknowledge her achievements, both big and small. "Can I ask you something, Sophie?" "Sure, Daddy Christopher." "Would you like me to come to your parent-teacher conference with your mom?" Sophie's eyes lit up. "Really? You'd come to my school?" "If it's okay with your mom," Christopher said, looking at Amara for approval. Amara felt a flutter of emotion at the simple offer. No one had ever offered to accompany her to Sophie's school events before. That would be wonderful. The parent-teacher conference was a revelation for Christopher. He'd attended countless board meetings and investor presentations, but watching Sophie's teacher describe her daughter's progress filled him with a different kind of pride entirely. "Sophie is reading above grade level and shows real aptitude for mathematics," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She's also one of our natural leaders. Other children look up to her." "She's always been special," Amara said proudly. "I can see where she gets it," Mrs. Patterson said warmly. "It's wonderful to see such involved parents." Walking out of the school together, Christopher felt something shift inside him. Parents. Plural. Not just Amara as Sophie's mother, but both of them as Sophie's parents. "How did that feel?" Amara asked as they walked to the car. "Like I belonged there," Christopher said honestly. "Like I had the right to be proud of her achievements." "You do have that right. You've earned it." That weekend, Christopher suggested they all go somewhere together as a family. "What would you like to do, Sophie?" "Can we go to the zoo? I want to show Lucas the animals." The zoo trip became one of Christopher's favorite memories. Sophie acted as tour guide, explaining each animal to Lucas with 6-year-old authority, while Christopher pushed the stroller and Amara took pictures. They looked like any other family enjoying a weekend outing. "Look, Lucas," Sophie said, pointing at the elephants. "Those are elephants. They have long noses called trunks and they're very smart like Daddy Christopher." "Like Daddy Christopher?" Amara teased. "He's smart about business stuff and they're smart about elephant stuff," Sophie explained matter-of-factly. Lucas seemed fascinated by the animals, his eyes tracking movement and his little hands reaching toward colorful birds. Christopher found himself narrating everything they saw, watching for his son's reactions. "I think he likes the monkeys best," Christopher observed as Lucas giggled at their antics. "He's probably thinking they're as silly as his daddy," Amara said, making Christopher laugh. That evening, as they put Sophie and Lucas to bed, Christopher felt a completeness he'd never experienced before. This felt right in a way nothing ever had. "Amara," he said as they settled in the living room with tea, "can I tell you something?" "Always. I've been thinking about my parents a lot lately. About how different my childhood was from Sophie's." "How so?" "My parents loved me, I think, but they didn't really know how to show it. Everything was scheduled and formal. Family dinner was like a business meeting. Affection was expressed through expensive gifts rather than time or attention. That must have been lonely. I didn't realize it at the time, but yes. It was very lonely." Christopher paused. "I don't want Lucas to grow up feeling like I did." "He won't," Amara said confidently. "Look at how you are with him now. You hold him when he cries. You sing to him. You talk to him like he understands every word. Because he does understand, doesn't he? Maybe not the words, but the feelings behind them." "Exactly. Children understand love long before they understand language." Christopher was quiet for a moment. "I want to understand love the way Sophie and Lucas do. Simply and completely." "What do you mean?" "Sophie loves without reservation. She doesn't calculate the risks or worry about getting hurt. She just loves. And Lucas trusts so completely. Even after his mother abandoned him, He still opens his heart to people who show him kindness. And you want to love like that? I want to try. Christopher met Amara's eyes. I want to try with you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Amara felt her heart skip, but also a flutter of uncertainty. Christopher. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I'm just telling you how I feel. Living here with you, watching you with the children, learning from you every day. I'm falling in love with you. This is complicated, Amara said softly. Why? Because I work for you. Because our children depend on this arrangement. Because if things go wrong between us, it affects Sophie and Lucas. Christopher nodded, understanding her concerns. You're right. It is complicated. But complicated doesn't mean impossible, does it? No, Amara admitted. It doesn't. Can we take it slow? See where it leads. Amara studied his face, seeing the same sincerity that had drawn her to help him that first night on the bench. We can try. The shift in their relationship was subtle but noticeable. Christopher began bringing Amara flowers on Fridays, not expensive arrangements but simple bouquets from the farmer's market. They started watching movies together after the children were asleep, sitting closer on the couch, sometimes holding hands. Sophie noticed, of course. Children always notice changes in the adults around them. Are you and Mummy getting married? She asked Christopher one morning as he helped her with breakfast. Would you like that? Christopher asked carefully. I think so. You make Mummy smile more. And you make really good pancakes. Those are both important qualifications for a husband, Christopher said seriously, making Sophie giggle. Plus you love Lucas and me. I do love you and Lucas. Very much. Then you should probably marry Mummy, Sophie said with 6-year-old logic. That's what people do when they love each other. As Christopher flipped pancakes and listened to Sophie's reasoning, he realized she was absolutely right. People who love each other do get married. They build families and homes and futures together. For the first time since his divorce, Christopher began to imagine a future that included marriage, not as a business partnership but as a union of hearts and lives genuinely committed to each other. Life had settled into a beautiful routine when the phone call came that threatened to destroy everything they'd built. Christopher was at the office when his lawyer called with news that made his blood run cold. Rachel's filed for custody of Lucas, the lawyer explained. She's claiming you're an unfit father due to your recent lifestyle changes. Lifestyle changes? Christopher repeated, his voice tight. She's claiming you've abandoned your responsibilities, that you're living with a woman of questionable character, and that Lucas would be better off with her. Christopher felt rage building in his chest. She abandoned him. She left him with me and said she never wanted to see him again. I know that, Christopher, but the family court system often favors mothers. We need to prepare for a fight. That evening, Christopher came home to find Amara and Sophie playing with Lucas in the living room. The scene that usually filled him with joy now filled him with terror. What if he lost this? What if Rachel succeeded in taking Lucas away? Christopher, what's wrong? Amara asked immediately, recognizing the stricken look on his face. After Sophie went to bed, Christopher told Amara about Rachel's custody petition. He watched the color drain from her face as the implications became clear. She wants to take Lucas back? Amara asked quietly. According to my lawyer, yes. After abandoning him for months? The law doesn't always make sense, Christopher said bitterly. And apparently living with you makes me look unstable in court. Amara flinched as if he'd slapped her. I see. That's not what I meant, Christopher said quickly. That's what her lawyers are claiming. Not what I believe. Maybe I should move back to my apartment until this is resolved, Amara suggested, though her voice shook at the thought. No, Christopher said firmly. We don't run away from problems. We face them together. But if my presence here hurts your case, then we fight harder. Amara, you and Sophie are not the problem. You're the solution. Lucas thrives with us. Any court with eyes can see that. The next few weeks were a nightmare of legal preparations. Christopher's lawyers worked around the clock building a case that showed Lucas's well-being and stability in their care. Character references, medical records, photographs of Lucas happy and healthy, testimony about Christopher's transformation as a father. But Rachel's lawyers were aggressive, painting Christopher as an irresponsible playboy who'd moved a strange woman and child into his home without proper vetting. They questioned Amara's motives, suggesting she was a gold digger who'd targeted a vulnerable wealthy man. They're going to put you on the witness stand, Christopher's lawyer warned Amara. They'll try to make you look like you're taking advantage of Christopher's situation. Let them, Amara said firmly. I know why I'm here. I know how I feel about Christopher and Lucas. The truth will speak for itself. The custody hearing was held on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown family court. Christopher sat at the defendant's table with his legal team, while Rachel sat across the room looking polished and remorseful. Rachel's lawyer painted a picture of a mother who'd made a mistake in leaving but had since gotten therapy and was ready to provide Lucas with the stable home he deserved. They argued that Christopher's lifestyle was chaotic, that he'd moved strangers into his home, and that a baby needed his biological mother. Ms. Thompson, Rachel's lawyer said when Amara took the witness stand, how long have you known Mr. Bennett? About 4 months. And you moved into his expensive penthouse after knowing him for how long? 3 weeks. That seems rather fast, doesn't it? Moving in with a man you barely knew. I didn't move in with a man I barely knew, Amara said calmly. I accepted a job caring for a baby who needed help. A very well-paying job, I'm sure. A fair job that allows me to provide better for my daughter while helping a family that needed support. Isn't it true that you saw an opportunity to improve your financial situation by targeting a wealthy single father? Amara's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. No, that's not true at all. Then explain how a chance encounter led to you living in a penthouse within weeks. I encountered a scared father and a crying baby on a park bench in the rain, Amara said, her voice growing stronger. I offered help because it was the right thing to do. When I realized Christopher needed ongoing support learning to care for Lucas, I accepted his job offer because I could see that Lucas was thriving with consistent, loving care. When have you ever seen someone attack a person's kindness and try to make it look selfish? When good people are painted as villains for helping others, doesn't it make you want to stand up for what's right? Share your thoughts about protecting families like this one, and subscribe for more stories about love triumphing over legal battles. Christopher's lawyer then called witnesses who testified about the transformation they'd seen in both Christopher and Lucas. Rebecca, his assistant, testified about how much happier and more focused Christopher had become. Mrs. Rodriguez, Amara's neighbor, testified about Amara's character and dedication as a mother. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Sophie, despite being only 6 years old, was allowed to speak to the judge privately about her home situation. I love living with Daddy Christopher and baby Lucas, Sophie told the judge simply. Daddy Christopher helps me with homework and comes to school stuff. Lucas laughs when I sing to him. We're a family now. When the judge asked Sophie what she thought would happen if Lucas had to leave, her answer was heartbreaking in its simplicity. He would be sad. And Daddy Christopher would be sad. And Mommy would cry. And I would miss my baby brother. The judge took a recess to consider the evidence. During the break, Christopher, Amara, and Sophie sat together in the hallway holding each other tight. Whatever happens, Christopher told Amara, this hasn't been a mistake. You and Sophie have made Lucas and me better people. It won't matter what the judge decides, Amara replied. We'll always be a family in our hearts. When court reconvened, the judge delivered his decision with careful authority. This court has heard testimony about Ms. Williams's regret for abandoning her child and her desire to resume custody. However, this court's primary concern is the best interest of the child in question. Christopher held his breath. The evidence shows clearly that Lucas Bennett has thrived in his current living situation. Medical records show improved health and development. Photographs and testimony demonstrate a happy, well-adjusted child in a stable home environment with multiple loving caregivers. The judge continued, while biological relationships are important, this court recognizes that families come in many forms. The unconventional nature of this family structure does not diminish its effectiveness in providing for Lucas's needs. Christopher felt tears building in his eyes. Therefore, this court awards primary custody of Lucas Bennett to his father, Christopher Bennett, with supervised visitation rights for the biological mother. The current living arrangement will continue, as it clearly serves the child's best interests. The relief that flooded through Christopher was so intense he nearly collapsed. They'd won. Lucas could stay with his family. As they left the courthouse together, Sophie took Christopher's hand. Does this mean Lucas is really our family forever now? Forever and always, Christopher promised, lifting her into his arms while Amara carried a sleeping Lucas. They'd faced the challenge together and emerged stronger. Now nothing could tear their chosen family apart. The custody victory should have been the end of their legal troubles, but Rachel's determination to regain control of Lucas proved stronger than anyone anticipated. Within a week of losing the custody hearing, she filed an emergency appeal, claiming new evidence of Christopher's unfitness as a parent. What new evidence could she possibly have? Christopher asked his lawyer during an emergency meeting. She's claiming that you're financially unstable due to recent business losses, and that you're putting Lucas at risk by having him around unvetted individuals, the lawyer explained grimly. Christopher felt sick. The Samsung deal fell through last month, but that hardly makes me financially unstable. And what unvetted individuals? She's hired a private investigator. They have photos of you, Amara, and the children in various public places. They're claiming you're exposing Lucas to potential dangers by taking him to parks, grocery stores, normal family activities. That's insane, Amara said. Those are normal, healthy activities for a baby. In family court, everything can be twisted, the lawyer warned. She's also questioning your living arrangement again, suggesting it's inappropriate for Lucas to be exposed to an unmarried couple's relationship. The hearing was scheduled for the following month, giving Rachel's legal team time to build their case while Christopher's team prepared their defense. The stress began affecting everyone in the household. Lucas, sensitive to the tension around him, became fussier and more clingy. Sophie worried that they might have to move again, asking repeatedly if they were still going to be a family. Christopher threw himself into work to distract from his anxiety, while Amara struggled with guilt over potentially being the cause of Lucas losing his father. Maybe I should step back, Amara suggested one evening after a particularly difficult day when Lucas wouldn't stop crying. If the court thinks our relationship is inappropriate for Lucas. No, Christopher said firmly, taking Lucas from her arms. We don't solve problems by running away from each other. We solve them by standing together. But what if standing together cost you your son? Christopher looked down at Lucas, who was finally beginning to calm in his father's arms, then back at Amara. What kind of father would I be if I taught my son that love is something to hide or be ashamed of? What kind of man would I be if I abandoned the woman I love when things get difficult? Christopher. I love you, Amara. I love Sophie. I love the family we've built together. And I'll fight for all of it. The weeks leading up to the hearing were intense with preparation. Christopher's legal team gathered evidence of his financial stability, his growth as a father, and the positive impact Amara and Sophie had on Lucas's development. They compiled testimonials from neighbors, Sophie's teachers, Lucas's pediatrician, and colleagues who'd witnessed Christopher's transformation. But Rachel's team was equally prepared. They presented financial analysis suggesting Christopher's business was more unstable than it appeared, questioned the appropriateness of his relationship with an employee, and brought in child psychology experts who testified about the potential confusion for Lucas of having so many parental figures. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed with supporters on both sides. Mrs. Rodriguez came to support Amara, along with several colleagues from the hospital. Christopher's business partners and longtime friends filled the seats behind him. Rachel took the stand first, presenting herself as a reformed mother who'd made mistakes but was now ready to provide Lucas with the stable, traditional home he needed. I was overwhelmed and made poor choices, she testified, tears streaming down her face. But I've been in therapy, I've prepared a proper nursery, and I can offer Lucas something Mr. Bennett cannot, a mother's love. When it was Christopher's turn to testify, he spoke from his heart about the journey he'd been on since that night on the park bench. For months ago I was lost, he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. I had all the money in the world but I had no idea how to be a father. Lucas was crying constantly, and I was failing him every day. He continued, then I met Amara and Sophie who taught me that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. It's about learning and growing and putting your child's needs first, even when it's hard. Christopher's voice grew stronger. Lucas isn't confused by our family structure. He's secure in it. He knows he's loved by multiple people who would do anything for him. He has a father who's learned to prioritize being present over being successful. He has Amara who has more natural mothering instinct than anyone I've ever met. And he has Sophie who treats him like the most precious little brother in the world. When Amara testified, she spoke simply and honestly about her love for Lucas and her commitment to his well-being. I didn't seek out this situation, she said. But when I saw a father and child who needed help, I couldn't walk away. Lucas has become like my own son. Not because I'm trying to replace his biological mother, but because that's what happens when you open your heart to a child who needs love. The most powerful testimony came from Dr. Patricia Williams, a family therapist who had observed their family dynamics through the legal process. In my 20 years of practice, I have rarely seen a child as secure and happy as Lucas Bennett, she testified. He has formed healthy attachments to multiple caregivers, which actually makes him more resilient, not less. The family structure may be unconventional, but it is undeniably functional and loving. After both sides presented their cases, the judge took a longer recess than before to consider all the evidence. During the wait, Christopher, Amara, Sophie, and even little Lucas sat together in the hallway, a family united regardless of what the court decided. "I'm proud of us," Christopher told them quietly. "Whatever happens, I'm proud of who we've become together." When the judge returned, his decision was thorough and decisive. "This court has now heard extensive testimony about what is best for Lucas Bennett," he began. "While I appreciate Ms. Williams's efforts at self-improvement, the evidence clearly shows that Lucas has not only survived but thrived in his current family situation." The judge continued, "The unconventional nature of this family does not make it less valid. In fact, the evidence suggests that Lucas is benefiting from having multiple dedicated caregivers who work together seamlessly for his well-being." Christopher felt Amara's hand squeeze his tighter. "Therefore, this court not only upholds the previous custody decision but strongly recommends that the biological mother cease these disruptive legal challenges unless she can demonstrate genuine concern for her son's well-being rather than her own desires for control." The relief in the courtroom was palpable. They'd won again, but more than that, the judge had validated their family structure as legitimate and beneficial for Lucas. As they left the courthouse for the second time, Sophie asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Does this mean she can't try to take Lucas away anymore?" "It means," Christopher said, lifting her into his arms while Amara held Lucas, "that our family is legally recognized and protected. We're real in the eyes of the law now." "We were always real," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Love makes families real, not judges." Once again, the 6-year-old had summarized everything perfectly. They were a family because they chose to be, because they showed up for each other, because they loved without reservation. The legal recognition was just the world catching up to what they'd known all along. 6 months after the final custody hearing, life had settled into the kind of peaceful routine that Christopher had never believed possible. Lucas, now 10 months old, was crawling everywhere and pulling himself up on furniture, his personality blossoming more each day. Sophie had adjusted beautifully to her role as big sister, and her grades at school continued to excel. But the most significant change was in Christopher himself. The driven, isolated businessman had been replaced by someone who prioritized family dinners over late meetings, who knew the names of Sophie's friends and teachers, who could soothe Lucas's nighttime fears with a gentle touch. "You've become completely domesticated," Amara teased one Saturday morning, watching Christopher expertly change Lucas's diaper while discussing weekend plans with Sophie. "Is that a bad thing?" Christopher asked, lifting Lucas into his arms. "It's a wonderful thing," Amara replied, kissing his cheek softly. Their relationship had deepened naturally over the months, moving from friendship to partnership to love without drama or complications. They simply fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting to be completed. "Amara," Christopher said that evening after Sophie and Lucas were both asleep, "can we talk?" "Always," she replied, settling beside him on the couch with her tea. Christopher pulled out a small velvet box, but instead of dropping to one knee dramatically, he simply held it between them. "I know this might seem sudden to some people," he began, "but it doesn't feel sudden to me. It feels like this is what I've been moving toward my whole life." Amara's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the simple but beautiful ring. "I don't want to marry you because it would look better in court, or because it would make our living situation more conventional, or because it's what people expect," Christopher continued. "I want to marry you because you've taught me what love actually means. Because you've shown me how to be the kind of man I want to be. Because I can't imagine my life or Lucas's life without you and Sophie in it. Christopher. I know we started as strangers who helped each other in a crisis, but we've become something much more important than that. We've become a family. And I'd like to make that official if you'll have me." Amara looked at this man who had changed so completely from the broken person she'd found on a park bench. "Are you sure you're ready for this? For all of it? Marriage, being Sophie's stepfather officially, combining our lives completely?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Christopher said honestly. "Amara, you and Sophie saved Lucas and me in every way that matters. You taught us how to live instead of just existing. You showed us what home really means." "And what does home mean?" Amara asked softly. "Home is where love lives," Christopher replied, echoing something Sophie had said weeks earlier. "Home is where people show up for each other, where mistakes are forgiven, where every day is a chance to love each other better." Amara reached for the ring box, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Christopher slipped the ring onto her finger, both of them were crying happy tears. This wasn't just a proposal, it was the official recognition of what they'd already built together. The engagement was celebrated quietly with just the four of them. Sophie was ecstatic, immediately beginning to plan what she called the most beautiful wedding ever, while Lucas clapped his hands and babbled as if he understood the significance of the moment. They decided on a simple ceremony in the apartment where they'd first become a family. It seemed fitting to celebrate their new beginning in the place where their love had first taken root. The wedding day was perfect in its simplicity. Mrs. Rodriguez came to witness, along with Rebecca from Christopher's office, a few colleagues from Amara's hospital, and Sophie's teacher, who had become a friend to the family. The ceremony was performed by a family court judge who had witnessed their journey. Sophie served as maid of honor, carrying Lucas down the short aisle in their living room. She wore a simple blue dress and a flower crown she'd made herself, while Lucas wore a tiny suit that made him look impossibly adorable. Amara wore a simple ivory dress that made her look radiant, while Christopher chose a gray suit that somehow managed to look both elegant and approachable. When it came time for vows, Christopher spoke from his heart. Amara, when you found me on that bench, I was lost in every way that mattered. You didn't just help me learn how to take care of Lucas. You helped me learn how to take care of myself, how to be present, how to love without fear. You've made me a better father, a better man, and a better human being. He continued, his voice steady despite his emotion. I promise to show up for you every day in big ways and small ways. I promise to love Sophie like she's my own daughter because she is. I promise to build a life with you that's based on kindness, honesty, and putting our family first. Amara's vows were equally heartfelt. Christopher, when I offered to help you that night, I thought I was just doing what anyone would do. I had no idea you would change my life so completely. You've shown Sophie what it means to have a father who's present and engaged. You've given us security and stability, but more than that, you've given us love. She paused, looking at Sophie and Lucas before continuing. I promise to support your dreams while never letting you forget what's most important. I promise to love Lucas like he's my own son because he is. I promise to build a home with you where our children feel safe to be themselves, where love is expressed freely, and where every day is a celebration of what we have together. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers. But the most beautiful moment came when Sophie, without being asked, took Lucas's tiny hand and placed it on top of Christopher and Amara's joined hands. Now we're all connected, she announced with 6-year-old wisdom that made every adult in the room tear up. The reception was held in their living room, with takeout from their favorite restaurant and a simple cake that Sophie had helped decorate. Lucas took his first steps that day, walking unsteadily from Christopher's arms to Amara's while everyone cheered. He waited for the wedding, Sophie said with absolute certainty. He wanted to walk at the wedding so everyone could see how happy he is. Later that evening, after their guests had gone home and the children were asleep, Christopher and Amara sat together on their couch, still in their wedding clothes but barefoot and comfortable. How does it feel to be married? Amara asked, admiring her wedding ring. It feels like coming home, Christopher replied, pulling her closer. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. No regrets about giving up the bachelor-billionaire lifestyle? Christopher laughed. You mean the lonely penthouse and the string of meaningless relationships? Not for a second. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their home. Sophie talking in her sleep in the next room, Lucas making soft baby sounds through the monitor, the familiar creaks and settles of a place where a family lived and loved. Do you remember what you said to me that first night? Christopher asked. About how sometimes we all need help? I remember. You were wrong about one thing, Christopher said softly. What's that? You said it was my turn to receive help that night. But the truth is you needed help too. You needed help providing for Sophie, help giving her the life she deserved, help not having to carry everything alone anymore. Amara considered this. So we helped each other. We saved each other, Christopher corrected. All four of us. We created something beautiful out of our individual struggles. As they prepared for bed that night, Christopher reflected on how much had changed since that rainy evening when a 6-year-old girl had asked an innocent question that changed everything. Mummy, why is he sleeping here? Had been the beginning of a love story that proved families could be chosen, that love could heal the deepest wounds, and that sometimes the most important help comes from the most unexpected places. 1 year later, as Christopher watched his wife give Lucas his breakfast while Sophie helped by getting his sippy cup, he realized he'd found something worth more than all his business success combined. He'd found home. Not a place but people. Not perfection but presence. Not wealth but love. And in the end, love was the only success that truly mattered.